When I was a little kid, my parents gave me up for adoption because I was a boy. They recently got in touch after 20 years, asking for money to help my sister with her education. I'm 25 years old and my story starts back when I was 6 years old, or even from when I was born. I'm the youngest of 3 kids. We weren't rich, but we managed with what my parents earned. We lived in a small town in an old family home, which kept our costs down. My grandparents had a farm that provided a lot of our food. My dad drove trucks and was home every few days. Mom worked as a waitress. When I came along, they already had 2 daughters, so I wasn't planned, and that made me feel like I wasn't wanted, even though I didn't fully understand it when I was young. My parents didn't want me because they wanted a girl. But the doctor said it was risky for my mom's health to get rid of me. My mom's reason was simple. She wanted me to wear my older sister's clothes so she wouldn't have to buy new ones. My sisters could share clothes because they were close in age. But when I was born a boy, my parents were upset. They were really mad at me. They made me wear girls' clothes and even sent me to school in my sister's old uniform. It was so embarrassing. Even though I was young, I remember being teased for wearing a girl's uniform and having long hair. If I complained, my mom would hit me. I grew up hearing mean things from my parents, which I didn't always understand at first. But when I did, I started to hate them. My dad was a bit better than Mom, but he was often away and unreliable. Sometimes he seemed fair to all of us, but other times he acted just as mean as Mom, if not worse. I admit I wasn't always good. When I realized they treated me and my sisters unfairly, I rebelled. They always favored my sisters and I got whatever they didn't want, so I started being mean to them because I blamed them for my unhappiness as a kid. Of course, I got in trouble for it, sometimes pretty badly. I had to make my own breakfast and often went without dinner. Imagine how hard it was for a 6-year-old dealing with all this. There's one memory that stands out in my mind, a moment that changed everything for me. I can't recall if it was a day or a week, but I was being bullied badly on the playground for wearing girls' clothes. When I got home, I saw Mom had bought new holiday clothes for my sisters. I snapped and cut those clothes into pieces. It wasn't a good thing to do, and I'm not proud of it, but I was tired of being teased because of my parents' choices. It came from pain, not malice. Instead of understanding why I was hurting, my parents saw it as a huge mistake and decided to give me up for adoption. They waited a month, but no one wanted me, and that made them even angrier. They constantly told me how worthless I was, that nobody wanted me. I'd even heard my mom say she wished she had checked my gender before I was born, so she wouldn't have me. It's tough knowing my parents hate me for something I can't control. After no one came forward to adopt me, my parents started talking about it with their friends and relatives. Dad knew someone in the next town who ran a food van with his wife. They were not well off but really wanted a child. They were in their late 30s and had been trying for a baby for over 10 years without success. Dad talked to them, and they agreed to adopt me. I still remember the moment when Dad told Mom and my sisters about it. They were overjoyed to get rid of me. Dad warned that they were not rich and that I might not be able to go to school. Mom didn't care and just said, "Just send him there tomorrow." I felt numb and hurt, standing there quietly while they celebrated. Even though I didn't like them, I was scared and sad to leave. I had tears in my eyes but didn't cry out loud. They were so caught up in their happiness that they didn't notice. When Dad finally saw my tears, he comforted me and said we would leave for my new family the next morning. I cried loudly then, but it seemed like no one listened. I went to my room, packed my things, and hoped that my new family would be kinder. The next day, Dad drove me to the next town. I can't quite remember how I felt, but I know I wasn't crying. I might have been numb inside. When I arrived at my new family's house, I saw that they were indeed not wealthy. They had a small house with just one room. They had turned a storage area into my room. I didn't mind because at least I had my own space. Back at my old home, I never had a room or a proper bed. My sisters had beds, and I slept on a cot in a small closet for my things. This new room was smaller than what I was used to, but it felt cozy. My new parents, Mary and John, were kind and loving. However, coming from a troubled family, I wasn't used to that kind of love. I had never felt that kind of care. While I saw my parents showing love to my sisters, they never did the same for me. So I was wary of my new parents' affection, thinking it might not last. I tried not to get too close to them because I was afraid they might reject me too. It was all because of the tough times I had faced as a child. It took me several months to realize that my new parents genuinely cared for me and weren't pretending. Although I had to stop going to school that year because of the move, my new parents promised to enroll me in school the following year. I saw how hard they worked to save money for my education. That's when I began to return their love. Being adopted turned out to be a good thing for me. My biological parents never showed up after sending me to Mary and John, which honestly was a relief. Here I was accepted for who I am, a boy. Mary and John were incredibly hardworking. They worked long hours, 14 to 16 hours a day, for their food truck. The truck was right outside our apartment, so I was never alone when they were working. I could see them from my bedroom window. Eventually, I started helping them on the truck during the day, doing whatever I could to assist them. Once I started school, I focused on my studies but also pitched in with chores whenever I could. By the time I was a little over 10, I was helping John at the cash register and was good with numbers. I learned about business and accounting early on. After high school, I wanted to take over their food truck business, but they insisted I finish college first. They used their savings to support my education. As they grew older, they couldn't run the truck as before. I wanted to repay their kindness by taking over, but they encouraged me to pursue higher education. In college, I studied business and accounting because I dreamed of becoming an entrepreneur. Graduation day was a highlight for me, and John and Mary were thrilled. They even invited my biological parents, but they didn't come. After college, I planned to take over the food truck and let them retire, but they surprised me. They had saved up a lot and handed it all to me. John's generosity overwhelmed me. He assured me they could manage for a few more years but didn't want to burden me. Instead, he gave me the money to start my own business. I didn't want to squander his gift, so I applied my business knowledge. I searched for a struggling local eatery in a good location and proposed to lease it using a profit-sharing model. After many tries, I found one that agreed. I built it from scratch, revamped the place and menu to appeal to younger generations, and provided excellent service. Within a year, sales soared, and I doubled the initial investment. Now, after 4 successful years, I own 3 thriving cafes in town. I decided to move Mary and John to a nicer apartment while I found a small place for myself. I had been living with them until then. I suggested they sell their food truck and enjoy their retirement, but they wanted to keep working for their own joy. When I left their house with my suitcase, I never imagined I'd become a college graduate and run restaurant chains in town. Fast forward to last month, just a regular day at work. I was working at the cash counter in one of my restaurants when I spotted a familiar face. It was like seeing a ghost, my biological father, whom I hadn't seen in almost 20 years. He looked frail and tired, but had a big smile as he hugged me. With customers around, I couldn't say much and took him to a quiet corner. Seeing him brought back all the difficult memories from my childhood. I wouldn't have been able to share these details about my past if they hadn't resurfaced in my life. He expressed how happy and proud he was to see me doing well in life. I didn't know how to respond. I felt numb. He mentioned that he was passing through and spoke to John, who told him about my successful business. He said he would bring my mom over on the weekend. I didn't say much, and he left shortly after. After my workday ended, I went to John and shared that I didn't want to meet my biological parents, who had disowned me for being a boy. They knew about my difficult childhood. I felt like running away and hiding somewhere for the weekend, but Mary insisted I forgive them and move forward. I agreed to meet them only if Mary and John were with me. So, my biological parents arrived at John's house. I expected them to apologize, but they showed no remorse. Instead, they listed the things they had done for me. Mom said I should be grateful they found good parents for me who helped me succeed. I was stunned. I wanted to confront them, but Mary calmed me down. I diplomatically replied, "I'm grateful to have John and Mary as my parents." The meeting with my biological parents felt strange to me. The day after, my mother called me. I didn't recognize her voice, as it had been 20 years since we last spoke. She asked for money. She explained that my dad had lost his regular job and had been doing temporary work for years. She lost her job too, as most restaurants don't hire older waitresses. They were struggling to pay their bills. She asked for $20,000, which she had borrowed from friends to buy groceries. Now her friends wanted the money back, and she didn't have it. I said I would think about it and hung up. Even though I dislike them, I feel sorry that they're in this situation. Sometimes I think she's using me, but what if they really need help? I'd feel guilty for not helping, even though I have the money. Update 1. Thank you all for your feedback and support. I received a range of reactions about whether to help my mom with $20,000. I discussed it with Mary and John. Mary was glad I was considering helping, but she warned me to be cautious. John said it was my decision since it was my money. He shared my concern that they might be taking advantage of my emotions. After much thought, I decided to take a chance and sent the money to my mom's account. It felt good to help my family, despite their past mistreatment. However, my fears came true. A week later, my mom called again. I had mixed feelings. She thanked me for the help and then mentioned, "Your sisters want to meet you. When can you visit?" For a moment, I felt like my family truly wanted me back. I've never held any grudge against my sisters, even though I may have been mean to them as a child. I realized it wasn't their fault. Sometimes I even thought my parents abandoned me because they were struggling financially, not because they were cruel. When I told Mom we could meet on Sunday and I'd drive over, she suggested meeting somewhere else. I didn't think much of it and agreed. She said she'd text the details later, but after the call, I felt uneasy. Why didn't she want me to come home? I mean, meeting at a restaurant is fine, but when you haven't seen your family in so long, wouldn't you want to meet at home instead? She sent me the details, and it turned out to be one of the fanciest restaurants in town. I didn't dwell on it much then, as I was more focused on why they didn't invite me home. When I arrived at the restaurant, they were already there. My sisters hugged me warmly, and for a moment I felt happy seeing them after so long. We were having a good time catching up until it was time to order. They deliberately chose the most expensive items on the menu, and when they asked my father what he wanted, he jokingly said, "Order the most expensive one, my son can afford it." If it had been John or Mary who said that, I would have been proud, but from my biological parents, it felt hurtful and petty. I felt stuck as I watched them indulge in expensive dishes, draining my wallet. Yes, I ended up paying the bill too. I had fleeting thoughts of leaving before the bill arrived, but that would have been too harsh. Right then, I promised myself to never fall into their emotional traps again. I felt distant and detached for the rest of the evening, but I doubt they noticed. When we left, they didn't invite me home. Instead, my sister asked where we should eat next. I forced a smile and said, "Nowhere," before saying goodbye. Back home, I shared the experience with Mary, who was shocked and disheartened. She's kind and independent, and she found their behavior troubling. She advised me not to be naive again and to focus on my own life rather than dwelling on them. I followed her advice. My sisters and mother tried reaching out after a week, but I chose not to respond. It's been 2 months now, and they've stopped contacting me. I believe they understood that I don't want them in my life anymore. Update 2. Hi, everyone. Thank you for your support. As I mentioned before, I stopped responding to my sisters and biological parents because I realized they were only interested in my money. Yesterday, after about 5 months, my mother called again. I answered impulsively. She started with casual conversation, asking about my life and work, but it all felt insincere. I couldn't stand it, so I asked her what she wanted. She took a deep breath and said, "My daughters had to leave college because we couldn't afford their tuition. They'd want you to pay for their education." I was furious. She tried to calm me down, saying they were my sisters and family, and I should help them. I was at work and didn't want to get upset, so I ended the call. She called again in the evening, and although I ignored it a few times, I realized that ignoring the problem wouldn't make it go away. So I answered the next time she called. She immediately started talking about how excited my sisters were to go back to college and asked how we were going to handle the payments. She suggested I transfer the entire amount to her, and she would handle the tuition payments each semester so I wouldn't have to worry about it. I quickly stopped her and said, "Hold on, I'm not going to make any payments." She seemed shocked. She clearly didn't expect me to say no. She asked, "What do you mean you don't want to pay in one go? We can do it in installments if that's easier." I reiterated, "I don't want to pay at all. It's not my responsibility to pay for my older sister's education, especially after my parents abandoned me and never cared about me. Even now, you're only talking to me because you want to use my money." She became furious and started yelling at me, saying, "Don't forget that we're the ones who brought you into this world. Everything you have is because of us. Your dad made sure you had a good upbringing, and now it's your turn to support us. Your sisters and your parents are your responsibility, and you need to take care of all of us." I wanted to respond, but it was clear that she wasn't listening with an open mind. So I calmly said, "Yes, I owe a lot to my parents, John and Mary. They deserve all the credit for my success, and as for you guys, I don't recognize you. None of my documents or photos have your names. I don't think I know you at all," I calmly stated as she continued hurling insults. With that, I ended the call, saying, "Wrong number, lady. Call me what you will, selfish, cold, or anything else. I won't be giving my hard-earned money to people who abandoned me when I was just a child. They were never truly my family." Regarding the comments about me calling John and Mary by their names instead of Mom and Dad, let me clarify. I do call them Mom and Dad. Initially, it took me some time to adjust, but as they cared for me, provided for me, and loved me, I grew attached and started calling them Mom and Dad. I refer to them by their names here for storytelling purposes. John and Mary are my real parents. As for my biological parents, I don't even acknowledge them. They don't exist in my life. Sure, here's an easy-to-understand version of your story segment. Story 2. My wife cheated on me using an app she met at a convention. My wife and I got married 5 years ago. We connected really well and enjoyed doing nerdy things together. We both loved gaming, and sharing our passion for geek culture. She was incredibly important to me, and I believed our relationship was strong. We fell in love quickly, about 3 years before we got married. I met her at a convention, and I thought we were a perfect match. We bonded over our love for games like Legend of Zelda and discussions about the latest One Piece chapter. Some people search for their perfect player too in life, and for me, that was her. We got married quite quickly and had a very nerdy wedding where we encouraged everyone to dress up. Sadly, we couldn't go to many conventions because of our jobs and the costs involved. We hardly had the chance. However, for our 5-year anniversary, I wanted to do something special. Although I didn't earn much, I managed to surprise her with tickets to a major Comic Con, one that was a dream for many fans. She was overjoyed, and I was thrilled about our trip. I've never been great at reading women's signals. It often took me a while to realize when someone was interested in me, even with my wife. It took us several conversations on Discord before I caught on that she was into me and wanted to get closer. When we went to the convention, everything seemed fine. A girl dressed as Slave Princess Leia complimented my last-minute stormtrooper costume. Later, my wife mentioned how the girl seemed really into me, but I honestly didn't notice. I've always been bad at reading signals like that. My wife was a bit annoyed, but we carried on with our day at the 3-day event. At one meetup, a guy dressed as Han Solo caught my wife's attention. They started chatting a lot, and I felt a bit uncomfortable. When I mentioned I was her husband, he seemed dismissive and avoided eye contact. After he left, I talked to my wife about it. She reassured me that there was nothing going on, and he was just a friendly Star Wars fan. She was more into Star Wars than me, so she enjoyed geeking out with fellow fans. I shrugged it off, thinking it was harmless. The weekend went on, but my wife woke up feeling sick and tired the next day. I told her I'd go out for a bit and be back later. However, she wasn't responding to my messages. I still had 1 day left at the convention, so I bought her a gift to surprise her when I returned. As I got closer to our room, I heard strange noises, moaning. I tried to brush it off, thinking it might be my wife, but when I opened the door, I saw her looking guilty. I asked her what was going on, but she denied anything happened. I searched the room, but there was no one else there. After the convention, things changed. My wife became distant, working longer hours and always tired. When I suggested watching a movie together, she would say she was busy. Those moans I heard stayed in my mind, making me wonder what really happened. While my wife was in the shower, I noticed that her Discord notifications were off, which was unusual. I decided to check her phone, and to my surprise, it was still unlocked with the same passcode. I read her messages with the guy from the Star Wars meetup. They were flirting and exchanging pictures, and he even mentioned wanting to roleplay with her, which she seemed eager about. I was furious but pretended everything was fine when she asked. Deep down, I was researching how to start the divorce process. I wanted to confront her and show her that I knew everything, but I also wanted to hurt her like she hurt me. I lied about not being able to attend another convention with her, knowing she would be excited even though our relationship was falling apart. It hurt, but I couldn't let her know how much. On the day of the convention, I executed my plan. I had done some digging and found out that my wife and this guy actually worked closely together. At the convention, I spotted them together in line, right in front of her favorite voice actors. I disguised myself with a mask and observed them closely. As they approached the voice actors, my wife greeted them enthusiastically. They shared a kiss, and that's when I revealed myself, taking off my mask and confronting them. My wife was shocked and asked what I was doing. I accused her of cheating on me with him, showing her the Discord messages as proof. She tried to deny it, but the evidence was right there on the table. The people around were shocked by what I did, but I couldn't stay quiet. I announced to everyone there that my wife cheated on me with the guy she met at the convention. The celebrity who was present excused himself and left. My wife started crying and pleaded with me to listen, but I couldn't. I confronted her about lying to me, saying she was going alone. I knew about their meetings, late nights at work, and gaming sessions with her friends. When I asked her friends about the gaming nights, they said they hadn't heard anything about it because they were busy with holiday preparations. My wife admitted that she wanted an open relationship and had considered discussing it with me. I didn't want to hear any of it. She was also upset that I had confronted her in public. When we got home, I packed my things and stayed at a hotel. I contacted a lawyer to start the divorce process. She tried to convince me to stay and suggested having an open relationship where we could see other people, but I didn't want that. I wanted her, not anyone else. She was my partner, and I didn't want to share her with anyone else. My actions went viral on social media, causing a lot of embarrassment for my wife. I went through with the divorce and got the house and belongings. However, I chose to sell everything as I didn't want reminders of our painful past. I'm not sure what happened to my wife after that. The news spread in the nerd community, causing a stir on Twitter and other platforms. Her boss also found out about the situation, but I'm not concerned about what happened next. I'm focused on finding genuine love, not with someone who betrayed me like she did.